discuss the representation of functionals called boundary linear functional, sesquilinear functional on the Hilbert space. So, normally the practice is whenever we develop a structure, whether it is a vector space, norm space, Banach space or Hilbert space, we study what sort of the functionals are there on these spaces, their representation and the corresponding norm if it is bounded and so on. In case of the Banach space, we have seen that as soon as we change the space, the corresponding form or representation varies, changes, and also the representation you cannot say it is unique in case of the Banach space. Say for example, C naught, the dual of this is L1, L1 dual is L infinity, representation is in the form of the series, but when you go for the CAB, set of all continuous function defined over AB, then the representation not is in the form of the series, it is in the form of the integral. Okay. So, this is a very complicated case when we deal with a Banach space, means you have to identify what is the representation, you have to identify the space which we have as a dual space for this and like. But in case of the Hilbert space, the situation is much more simpler. In fact, we will see here that whatever the boundary linear functional be there, it will always have a same representation in the form of the inner product. Now, if the inner product changes, corresponding value will change, that is all, but the representation can be expressed in terms of the inner product, and this result is given by the Riech. So, we start with the Riech theorem. And this theorem says, which gives the functionals, in fact, it is a theorem on bounded linear functionals on Hilbert space. On Hilbert spaces. What this result says, every bounded linear functional f on a Hilbert space H, on a Hilbert space H can be represented in terms of the inner product. Inner product, namely f x, f is a boundary linear functional, x is a point in the Hilbert space, f x can be represented in the form of the inner product x z, where z, which depends on f, is uniquely determined by f and has norm equal to norm of f. So, what this result says is that if H be a Hilbert space and f be a boundary linear function on the Hilbert space H, then we can always express this f x in the form of the inner product, and this inner product is basically the inner product defined of H. This is the inner product taken on of course H. So, will be, and this z, it will depend on f, uniquely determined by f, and the norm of z and norm of f will be identical. So, in fact, we wanted to prove three things. One is every linear functional has a representation 1. Second one, the z which you are getting is uniquely determined, depend on and uniquely determined, and third is norm of z equal to norm of f. Okay. So, let us see the proof. Case 1. Now, if our bounded linear functional f is a null operator or null functional, then obviously this 1 and 2 hold if z is 0, because if f is 0, this f x will be 0 and here z is 0, then it will be inner product 0 and z is 0. So, basically this holds if z is 0. So, nothing to prove here. So, if let us take the case when f is non equal to 0, not 0 means it is a non-zero bounded linear functional on H. Now, if f is non-zero and representation f x we wanted into this form. So, let us see what are the property of z that can be enjoyed or that can be enjoyed by z, so that the 1 and 2 retains. What property of z enjoys in order to get 1 and 2. So, clearly z cannot be 0. Why? Because if suppose z is 0, then inner product will be 0. Now, inner product is 0 means this is true for any x. So, f of x 0 means for every x. So, it is only possible when f is 0. That will contradict our assumption, f is non-zero. Therefore, z cannot be 0. Clear? Z will not be a 0. Clearly, z will always be non-zero. It cannot be 0. Clear? So, once z is not 0, then second part is if the inner product x z is 0. Okay. It means inner product x z means 0 means f x is 0. So, those point, that is the point x belongs to H such that f x is 0 for that particular z. So, this x will be a point of the null space of f. Okay. So, that z which where it is 0, we get the null space of f. Now, this null space x is in null space, the inner product of x z is 0. If the inner product of the two non-zero vector is 0, then the only possibility is z must be orthogonal to x. So, this shows that z is perpendicular to x. It means z must be orthogonal to n f, is it not? Or z will be the point of n f perpendicular. So, this shows that z will be a point of n f perpendicular. I am using this symbol as n f perpendicular to be this, means orthogonal complement of n f. Okay. So, we get. So, what we basically is dealing is that when we choose f to be non-zero, then the z is such that it cannot be 0. It will always be taken as a non-zero term, it cannot be 0. Second one is that for non-zero z, we are breaking the entire H into the two subclasses, one is n f, another one is the n f complement. So, both the things, null space as well as its orthogonal complement will be available for our use. Is it correct? Now, another point which we have, since n f which is a null space is a vector space, is it not? And also closed because if x n converges to closeness follows like this. If x n converges to x and f is a linear functional or bounded linear functional, then f of x n will go to f x, but x n is an element in the null space n f. So, this part will be 0. So, for each n 1 to 3 we are getting basically a sequence, null sequence 0 0 0 0, and that converges to f x. So, x must be a point in null space. Clear? So, closeness follows like this. So, closeness. Okay. So, n f is closed as well as null space, and f is not equal to 0. So, the null space of this n f will be different from H. Why? N f will not be equal to H, that is the entire Hilbert space will not be a null space. Why? Because yes, because if N f is the entire Hilbert space, it means the set of those points where f x is 0. So, f x is 0 for all x. So, f must be 0, which contradicts. So, if f is not 0, then null space will be a subset of H. We have already got the possibility of getting the orthogonal complement of N f, clear. Therefore, by projection theorem, we can express Hilbert space H as a direct sum of the y n by orthogonality. So, we get from here. So, what we get is that N f orthogonal complements. So, N f orthogonal complement will be different from the singleton set 0. Why? Because of projection theorem. Because of the projection theorem, is it not? The reason is because if we take H a Hilbert space, it can be expressed as a direct sum of N f and N f orthogonal. Now, N f is not equal to H, clear. It means every element of H uniquely represented by the sum of these two. Now, if this is 0, then H becomes N f only, because these are intersection set and we get only singleton set 0. So, no points common should be there. Therefore, which contradicts again the thing. Therefore, this cannot be a null space, means it cannot contain only the 0, null is. It will be a something or non-empty set will be available. So, let Z naught be a point in the orthogonal complement of this which is not 0. Agreed? Clear? Means there are the points which are different from 0 in this. Now, let us consider this term V as f x z naught minus f z naught x. Just I am considering, because f is given, z naught already we have got it, x is a point in H. So, everything is known. So, we can construct this B. Then what is the value of this V under f? We see that f of B becomes f x f z naught minus f z naught f x. Is it not 0? Okay. Because f x is a some scalar, f is a linear functional. So, f of x will be scalar. So, f is a linear functional, boundary linear. So, it will be operated on this sum of or difference of this, and we get f z naught, and f z naught again a scalar can be taken outside f x, and this comes out to be 0. This shows that our V belongs to the null space of f. Clear? But z naught, which is not 0, is a point of the orthogonal complement of null space. So, we get the inner product of V and z naught is 0, but V is f x f z naught minus f z naught, this is f of, is it not? So, 0 equal to V z naught, substitute the value of V f x z naught minus f z naught x comma z naught. Is it okay? Open it. So, once you open this, then what we get is f x can be taken outside, z naught inner product minus f z naught can be taken outside, inner product of x z naught. From here we get the value of f x as this comes here f z naught divided by this into f x divided into inner product of x z naught. Is it okay or not? So, we are getting this. Now, what our aim was to represent the linear functional f into this form. I claim that we have got this representation in this form. Why? If we take this gives, this can be written in the form, or this can be written in the form 1 if we choose z to be f z naught conjugate over inner product z naught into z naught. What he says is, for a given f we want z. So, if f is given, if we choose z in this form and substitute it here, then this f x coincide with 1. You just see. Clear? So, substitute this thing in 1. What you get? F x in place of z you write this part. So, you are getting this thing is, if I write this is f x which is equal to x z. Okay. So, start with this x comma z, this is equal to x comma z, you write like this f z naught conjugate over z naught and z naught. Is it okay or not? So, this will be equal to, take this thing outside. So, this is taken from the second coordinate. So, conjugate of conjugate will becomes original, is it not? And then inner product of x z naught. Is it not this one which coincide with our 3? Okay. So, we have proved that corresponding to each f is a boundary linear functional, we can find a z, depend on f, and f x can be expressed into this form, the inner product of x z. Is it okay? Now, second part which we want to show, that this z which you are getting is unique. Okay? So, second is to show the uniqueness. To show z is unique. Suppose we do not have the uniqueness. Suppose there are two z1 and z2. Suppose z1 and z2 are two available such that for x belongs to H, there exists z1 and z2 such that f x has the representation as inner product of x z1, which is the same as the inner product of x z2. Agreed? Now, this can be written as x comma z1 minus z2 equal to 0. Okay. And this representation we want for all x, So, this is true for all x. So, let us write, replace x by z1 minus z2. We can choose. So, this becomes inner product of z1 minus z2, that is equal to norm of z1 minus z2 whole square, which is 0. But norm of anything is 0 means that point must be 0. So, this implies that z1 equal to z2. So, uniqueness follows. Now, third case, to show norm of Z equal to norm of F. Yes, something wrong? Okay. Norm of Z equal to norm of F. So, again we will take two cases. If F is 0, then Z is also 0 and 2 holes and 2 holes. This is 2, okay, 2 holes. So, if F is not equal to 0, let F is not equal to 0, then Z is also not equal to 0, otherwise contradiction that we think. Now, from this one we get from 1, that is the f x is represented in the form of x z. Replace x by z. So, what we get it? Inner product z z, which is equal to f z, okay, but f is bounded linear functional. This is a bounded linear functional. So, it will be less than equal to norm of f into norm of z by definition. Now, divide by norm, but this is equal to norm z square. So, we get this one is norm z square. So, we get norm of z is less than equal to norm, let it be alpha. Okay? Clear? Now, to get the converse inequality, consider mod of f x. This is equal to mod of inner product of x z. Apply Schwarz inequality. Schwarz inequality gives the relation between the inner product and the norm. So, it will be less than equal to norm x, norm z. Divide by norm x. So, we get from here is that if I divide by norm x, take the supremum over all x such that norm x is 1, then this is equal to modulus of inner product x z, take the supremum over all x where the norm x is 1. So, divide by x, that is why it is not norm x is 1, okay. And then in fact, let us take okay, less than equal to 1, then basically it is 1, okay. So, this becomes norm of x. So, this is equal to norm x equal to 1. So, we are getting this is supremum of this will give the norm f and this will give the supremum of inner product of x z where the norm x equal to 1. Is it okay? But this part is less than equal to what? This is less than equal to norm x into norm z. So, norm x is 1. So, we get norm z because norm x is 1. Modulus inner product is less than equal to norm x norm z. You are taking supremum over norm x equal to 1. So, this is norm z. Therefore, norm f is less than 0. So, let it be beta. So, alpha and beta gives the norm of z equal to norm of a. Okay? Okay? And that completes the lesson. Is okay proof? Now, as a corollary of this or corollary of the result which you are using, we can say as a lemma, this lemma will be also used. If proof is already we have done it, but just I want to state that lemma. If inner product of V 1 W is the same as the inner product of V 2 W for all W in an inner product space X, then V 1 equal to V 2. This is already done earlier, is it not? Take the V 1 minus V 2 W and W replaced by V 1 minus V 2. So, norm V 1 minus V 2 whole square, you are getting V 1, is it not? Clear? Hint is replace, choose W to be V 1 minus V 2, and then this thing can be written as, so entire thing can becomes V 1 minus V 2 whole square is 0. Is it right? And that implies V 1 equal to V 2. Clear? So, this lemma we will make use of, and in particular we can say if V 1 inner product of V 1 W is 0 for all W belongs to X, then implies V 1 must be 0. Clear? That is the same way we can prove. Now, so far this we have taken, but as you know the inner product, it has the set is vector space X together with an inner product defined only is the inner product space, and inner product is a sesquilinear form, because it has 2 coordinate, one with respect to the first coordinate it is linear, with respect to the second coordinate it is conjugate linear. So, we say it is a sesquilinear form. Now, this sesquilinear form, that is a example, particular example we have taken as a inner product, and we call it as a 1.5 times linear, but in general the sesquilinear forms are also play a vital role over the Hilbert space. So, in particular when we go for the Hilbert adjoint operators, then representation of these things will be given in terms of the sesquilinear forms. Okay. So, in order to study the Hilbert adjoint operator, we require the concept of the sesquilinear form and its representation of over the Hilbert space. So, let us see what is the sesquilinear form. Now, one more thing is which I will explain. Let X and Y be vector spaces over the same field K, which is either R or C. Then a sesquilinear form, or sesquilinear functional H on X cross Y is a mapping from X cross Y to K such that for all X, X1, X2 belongs to capital X and Y, Y1, Y2 belongs to capital Y, and all scalars alpha, beta, the following condition holds. The following hold. First is H of x1 plus x2 comma y equal to H of x1 comma y plus H of x2 comma y. That is linear with respect to the first coordinate. Second, H of x by 1 plus by 2 is H of x by 1 plus H of x by 2. There is no constant, constant is 1 1, but if the constant is alpha, say H alpha x comma y, then we say alpha outside H of x y, and if there is a beta in multiply by y, then we get beta conjugate H of x by. Okay? This is the conjugation. Now, this beta which is complex is real, then we simply say beta bar equal to beta and so on. In that case, H x by equal to H of by x or something. Okay? So, these properties are satisfied, it means H is, that is H is linear with respect to first coordinate, okay, first argument, and with respect to first coordinate, and conjugate linear with respect to the second coordinate, and it is called the sesquilinear form, that is why. Okay. And then norm of H in a similar way we define a bounded sesquilinear form means the examples of this is the inner product. Okay. Example is the inner product. Okay. So, that we know bounded sesquilinear form. If x and y are replaced by a norm space, then we can say if x and y are norm or a Banach space, norm spaces, and if there is a real number C such that for all x y we have modulus of x by absolute value of this is less than equal to C times norm of x into norm of y, then we say H is a bounded sesquilinear form, and from here we can write it. So, we can write norm of H as the supremum value of modulus H x by over norm of x into norm of y, where the supremum is taken over all x such that norm x is 1 and norm y is 1 and norm y is 1. Okay. So, supremum is taken over norm x is 1 and norm y is 1, that is the supremum. So, basically we can cite less than equal to 1 x minus this x minus this. So, it is equal to supremum modulus of H x by when the norm x equal to 1 norm y is equal to, that is the norm of this. It is called the according to the previous, just it goes as if it is the previous one. And combining this we can say this is called the norm of H, and combine this. So, we get modulus of x by is less than equal to norm x norm x norm h into norm x by, and this condition satisfied, say here is 3 or 4 what 6 something, okay, say gamma or theta something number, you just write anything. This we say H is a bounded linear sesquilinear form if its condition is satisfied, the mod of H is less than equal to C times norm, C becomes the minimum value, infimum value C is norm H. Now, since H is defined over H x cross y, the domain is x cross y. So, earlier the domain was only a single variable, say H, where element x belongs to H. It is a Cartesian product. So, instead of saying the functional, we used to prefer write form. Otherwise, we can also say it is a bounded linear functional on sesquilinear functional, that is also true, but because to differentiate between the bounded linear functional defined on a space which has a single variable and the space which has a Cartesian product double variable, we call it form for the second one and functional for the first one. Okay. So, this is our notations. Okay. Now, the ReH has also given the representation of this sesquilinear form, just like he has given the linear functional bounded linear functional representation in the form of inner product. Similarly, he has also given another result which gives how this bounded linear functional behaves, okay, over the Hilbert space. So, again we had the theorem which is given by the ReH representation of sesquilinear form. sesquilinear form. Okay. So, what is this say? Let H 1 and H 2 be Hilbert spaces. Let H 1 H 2 be Hilbert spaces, and H is a mapping from H 1 cross H 2 to K, a bounded sesquilinear form, a bounded sesquilinear form. So, H is giving to be a bounded sesquilinear from H 1 cross H 2. Instead of taking just inner product, here is taking as a both to be a Hilbert space. H 1 is also Hilbert space, H 2 is also a Hilbert space. Then what this result says is, then H has a representation H of x by as in the form of the inner product as S x comma y, S x comma y, where what is S? S is an bounded linear operator from H 1 to H 2, a bounded linear operator from H 1 to H 2. Now, this S is uniquely determined by H and has the same norm as the norm of H. So, basically this result is the parallel result, but only the difference is here H is considered to be a sesquilinear form, there H was the bounded linear functional, okay, F. So, what it says is that every sesquilinear form on H 1 cross H 2 will always be represented in the form of the inner product, but inner product is on H 2. This you remember, you see y is a point in H 2, here remember x is in H 1, y is in H 2. So, this inner product is basically the inner product of H 2, okay. And what is S? S should be a mapping from H 1 to H 2. So, if x is a point in H 1, the H of S of x will be a point of H 2. So, it is a well defined thing, is it correct? No. So, we have to prove two things. One is that first this representation S will be of this form. Second one, S which you are getting should be a bounded linear operator from H 1 to H 2, and third is both are having the same norm. So, first is, in order to prove the H has a representation this, we consider uniqueness follows already, uniqueness will, it will be, but it will follow from the previous, because we will make use of this. S is unique, yes, that is also uniqueness is also used. So, another point is S should be unique, is determined by H. Okay. So, we consider the H x by conjugate. Let us consider this. Okay. Now, here if I fix x for x belongs to H 1 fixed. Suppose I fix x, what happened this will behave as a function of y, but because of the conjugation it is linear with respect to y, is it not? Because H is a conjugate linearly with respect to second coordinate, but we are taking conjugate of it. So, that way second with respect to second coordinate, this entire thing becomes linear. Okay. So, we can say it is linear, this consider that this is linear, this is linear in y. Is it okay or not? Okay. Then apply previous theorem. Apply previous theorem for fixed x. So, for this fixed you can write for fixed x belongs to H 1. So, once you are applying previous theorem, then this will behave as a function of y. Is it okay? Because x will not play role. Now, any bounded linear functional f defined on H 2, f is a point in H 2. So, f by is a point in H 2. So, f will be bounded linear function on H 2. So, any Hilbert space if it is defined, f bounded linear function will be represented in the form of the inner product of that. So, this will be given in terms of the inner product of H 2, okay? And this inner product will be in the form of y comma z, because here y is variable. So, corresponding to f we can find z such that f y can be represented into this form, where the z is uniquely determined by f, and both are having the same norm as the norm of f, that is norm of h bar. But norm of h bar is h, okay? Is it clear or not? It is uniquely determined and norm of this on clear. Now, this by z, if we look this part and our representation this. So, what is our this h by x? Hence, we can say the h x by, the represented h x by is coming in the form of z by. Let it be this equation, say double I. Okay. Now, here the z belongs to H 2 is unique because of this result, boundary H is unique, but of course, it depends on x, which is a point in H 1, because x is fixed. Therefore, but z will always be unique corresponding to each x. So, it follows from 9. Therefore, we can say from 2 with variable x, one can defines an operator S from H 1 to H 2 given by z is equal to S x. Comparing with that, okay? Substituting z is equal to S x in 2, we get our first one I. That's so the representation that we have obtained the existence, or we have proved the existence of S from H 1 to H 2, which will give the corresponding. Okay. Now, once existence of S established, then we will prove S is linear and bounded. So, to show S is linear. Okay. Now, we start with this S alpha x 1 plus beta x 2 comma y. This is bracket alpha x 1 comma y. Now, by definition of this h of x z by, so we can write h of alpha x 1 plus beta x 2 y, but this can be written as alpha x 1 comma y plus beta h x 2 comma y, because h is linear, and then this will be equal to alpha again inner product s x 1 y plus beta inner product of s x 2 y, and this can be written alpha x 1 plus beta x 2 inner product comma y, and this shows S is linear. Okay. Now, to show the S is bounded, to show S is bounded. Okay. Now, if S is 0, then nothing to show. It is obvious, is it not? So, let us take S is non-zero. So, let S is non-zero. Then consider the norm of H. Norm of H, this H we have taken as Sz means in this form Z equal to H x by. So, when you take the norm of S, this is by definition supremum modulus of inner product S x by over norm of x, norm of y, and then x is not equal to 0, y is not equal to 0. Now, this is true for all x and y, supremum is taken over. So, let it be replaced by a particular value as h x. So, it will be greater than equal to modulus s x divided by norm x into norm of s x, and then supremum is taken over all x, which is not equal to 0. But this s x, this inner product of this s x is norm s x square, is it not? So, we get norm x, norm s x, okay, and then supremum. So, this will be equal to greater than or equal to supremum x is not equal to 0, norm of s x by norm x, and that is nothing but norm of s. So, we get this norm of s is greater than equal to norm of x. To see the reverse inequality, consider the reverse inequality will be again norm h, which is equal to supremum by definition inner product of h x by over norm of x, norm of y, x is not equal to 0, y is not equal to 0. Okay. Now, apply the Schwarz inequality. So, we can say it is less than equal to norm of s x, norm of y, and denominator remain as it is, norm of y, supremum is taken over all x not equal to 0, y is not, by using the Schwarz inequality. But this will be equal to what? Norm of supremum, norm of s x over norm x, and x is not equal to 0. So, we get this is the norm s. So, third and fourth implies the norm of h equal to norm of s. Okay. Clear? Now, what is left is s is unique. It has bounded linear operator from h 1 to h 2. Now, only thing left is s is unique and this. Okay. So, to show s is unique, suppose there is two representation. Suppose there exists, there is an bounded linear operator T, there is a linear operator T from h 1 to h 2, h 1 to h 2 such that for all x belongs to h 1 and y belongs to h 2, we have norm of inner product, sorry, this is we have representation h x y as the inner product h x y as well as inner product t x y. Suppose we have the two representation of this h x y in terms of the operator s and t, but this is equal to inner product s minus t x comma y equal to 0. This is true for what? This is true for all x belongs to h 1 and y belongs to h 2. Is it not? Now, once this is true for all x 1 and x 2, then what it can write y is equal to this operator itself. So, replace y by s minus t x. The s and t both are the operator from h 1 to h 2, s minus t bounded linear operator. So, s minus t will be an operator operate the element s minus t x to element of y. So, I am writing this one point y to be s minus t x. So, this gives you norm of s minus t whole square equal to 0, and this shows s is equal to c. So, uniqueness follow. Is it clear? Hence, s equal to c. So, this completes the proof of this. Thank you. Okay.